Now, when it comes to administrators, the IT or the security people on the back end of managing all of these things, it gets a little more hairy, right? Because we, even more so than employees of an organization, are held to a higher standard, and rightfully so, simply because we have greater access than any other user within the organization. Often, for instance, I have, in my organization, I have greater access to data than even the CEOs or the rest of the C-level executives, because I've been charged with the protection of all of that data. And with all of that access, as well as it was explained to me by a mentor of mine, it all comes down to having a strong ethical core to yourself, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that's kind of the best way that I've always, really, tried to tell my people at work, or even when I'm teaching lessons to my child, is just because you can doesn't mean you should. I have a lot of access. It doesn't mean that I use it really at all. However, by having access to tools and like scanning tools and audit tools and things like that, of course I need access to that data. Half of it, I wouldn't know what to do with even if I wanted to, because I don't have a need to know necessarily to the content. I just need to know the sensitivity of the data, so I know how to design the protections around that data. So that's why it's extremely important, and that's why you're really starting to see more and more organizations do much more extensive background checks and reference checks when it comes to their IT and security staff, is because they're getting ready to give you a lot of access, and they need to know that you are trustworthy and you can handle the burden of having that level of access. But again, at the end of the day, it all comes down to how am I going to protect it? The best key to it all is using encryption, right? Using encryption is going to reduce the risk as best as possible given circumstances, right? This is one of those opportunities, again, why it's important to know what is in your arsenal, to know what can be used. There are a lot of people, for instance, that think that under no circumstances should I use DES encryption, or under no circumstances should I use WEP encryption. And I will argue that that is 100% false. That is much too finite a term to use. There are absolutely going to be circumstances where maybe that's all I have available. Maybe all I can use is WEP encryption. So then I have to ask myself, is some encryption better than no encryption, right? Maybe I'm using legacy equipment with legacy operating systems, and all they can really handle without a major performance degradation is DES encryption or triple DES encryption. So just because it is a weak algorithm doesn't mean that under no circumstances should I use it. It's the best I have available to me. Now, of course, what's preferable is to use strong encryption like AES 256 or something like that, and to ensure end-to-end encryption, so that even the transit line, if you will, or the path that data takes cannot be deciphered. That is one of the central complaints, I think we'll call them, that you're seeing and hearing right now from some of the weaknesses found with Zoom, especially with everyone working from home now. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people working from home now. They transitioned to the Zoom platform. And of course, like anything else, weaknesses were found. I've been getting kind of daily or at least 3 times a week updates from Zoom on how they're improving the security and how they fix some of the flaws. And one of the biggest issues, right, that has arose is they have advertised, right, that they provided end-to-end encryption, and it seems as if that may not have been completely forthright. They used the words and they used how the technology kind of works to make that claim, but it wasn't actually true end-to-end encryption. The only way you can ensure end-to-end encryption essentially is you or your computer has the key, and then the far end computer has the key, and there isn't a handoff or exchange somewhere in the middle. Everything else in the middle, like all the routers, servers, switches in the middle, are just conduits to get that data stream from one side to the other. And that would be, kind of the purest example of full end-to-end encryption. And that's the only way you can really, begin to ensure that only the authorized users, right, you and whoever your recipient is, are the ones that can gain access. Now, I won't say that that is the absolute truth, right? Because just like we said with encryption, there's always little things, right, that may make exceptions. And end-to-end encryption it can be kind of the same if you don't have certain safeguards on both ends. Often it's your computer and the far end computer that are exchanging keys. It's not necessarily you exchanging a key over a VPN, for instance. So it's your device being authorized into the space a lot of times versus you being authorized to the space. So if somebody else has your computer, right, then accessing through that VPN, even though it's encrypted end to end, doesn't guarantee me that it's only authorized users in that pipe, but it greatly reduces the likelihood that the millions of people between point A and point B are going to be intercepting and collecting that data. Now, I'm not going to use the term that I'm sure you think I'm going to use, seeing the last bar here on this slide. One of the things that I kind of have a peeve about is when people say that security is everyone's job, because if security was everyone's job, then I wouldn't have a job, right? So security awareness is everyone's job. However, the practice of cybersecurity is not necessarily everyone's job. This is an opportunity, right, that security awareness, especially when it comes to data privacy versus data protection, it's really up to the user. You have to trust your users, that you have trained them adequately to recognize private data, how to protect private data, either in transit or at rest. What are their responsibilities if they think that unauthorized disclosure or unauthorized access has happened, and who to report that to. And that all comes under the guise of having good security awareness and having those policies and procedures all in place for you to educate your users on how to proceed. But it doesn't necessarily dictate that security is everyone's job. That's kind of, it's kind of our job to make sure it's in place, and then we educate our users as far as how to get that done, so that we can all be, kind of fighting on the same team.